So you really think you're brave enough to join me for part 2 of Coin Safari Return from the Wild? Well, if that's the case, go ahead and grab your Winchester Model 70. I'm going to grab my trusty Swiss K31 straight pull rifle, and we're going to jump in the back of this Land Rover Defender, and we're going to see these coins return from the taxidermist. Did they turn out to be big game trophies, or are we the ones who got stuffed? If you are new to the channel, I'll be your safari guide. My name is White Cross. If you're one of my returning subscribers, thank you guys for being with me here again today. Part 2 of this unboxing return from NGC. This is going to be a lot of fun, believe me. If you are new to the channel, I want to thank you again for being with me here today and let you know that I usually begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. That is, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And if you are new to the channel, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Also remember to like the videos. That works well in the algorithms that YouTube uses. But I also like to begin each of my videos, if I can, with a couple of definitions that we can work back into the subject that we're talking about. And that's really important tonight because we're going to be talking about coins that have details grades. Now, I touched on details grades a little bit in Coin Safari Volume 1 when we actually showed these coins before I shipped them off to NGC. But I think it's important to kind of outline exactly what a details graded coin is, especially for folks who aren't familiar with that terminology. Details graded coins all have to do with something called an adjectival phrase. An adjectival phrase is a group of words headed by an adjective that describes a noun. I know that sounds a little bit English professory, but the truth of the matter is that there are words that are connected together that equate to the numbers on the Sheldon grading scale. We've talked about Dr. Sheldon's scale a lot on this channel. It's simply a coin grading scale where coins are graded on a continuum between 1 and 70, with 1 being almost theoretically bad and 70 being almost theoretically good. Somewhere along the lines is where every coin falls on this continuum. And there are groups of words that describe each of these train stops, each of these safari stops, if you will. And these groups of words have names kind of like about good, very fine, extremely fine, about uncirculated. Those are adjectival phrases. Groups of words that describe the noun. In this case, the noun is understood to be the coin that we're talking about. Why is that important? Who cares about that? Well, each of those adjectival phrases corresponds to a number on the Sheldon grading scale. But when it comes to details grading, there are coins that have problems on their surfaces that are so extreme that the reputable third-party graders don't feel comfortable giving them a Sheldon numeric grade. But that doesn't mean they won't grade them. They look at the details that still exist on the surface of the coin from being in circulation, and they offer the adjectival phrase without giving you the numerical grade. So in case of a details graded coin, it could be a coin that grades extremely fine 40, but it's got a hole all the way through it, or it's got a deep scratch on it, or it's been harshly cleaned. Remember, kids, don't clean your coins. If there is a surface issue that is so extreme that the reputable third-party graders can't give it a numeric grade, they will still take a look at the details that exist on the coin and offer the adjectival phrase, and then they will call the coin a details graded coin with just that adjectival phrase. So we'll see some examples about that of those later on in this video, and I talked about them in the first video from this series. I actually suggested that some of these pieces would come back details graded. If you recall, several of these pieces had really significant rim damage. It looks like I said in the last video that they'd been driven over in a parking lot, and that's kind of the way I feel about them. The fact is that they were probably tossed around in trunks or thrown into drawers somewhere. Some of these pieces definitely saw use, and some of these pieces would have been seeing use in combat situations, or at least kind of those types of situations. And they don't lend themselves to very good coin conservation. So we're going to be talking about details graded coins And I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about those so when you see them, you have a better idea of what it is that we're talking about. For the record, a details graded coin is generally deeply discounted in terms of value compared to a straight graded coin. That's what we would call a coin that doesn't have surface issues that are so bad that the third-party graders just give them an adjectival phrase coin, or a damaged coin, or a details grade. A straight graded coin has that adjectival phrase and the numeric grade. So a details graded coin is often greatly discounted, sometimes by 30, 40, 50%, or even more, compared to that same coin that is straight graded, coin that does not have that details grade. What difference does that make in the scheme of things? There are some coins that are significant enough that even if a coin just grades details, at least you know, assuming the coin has been graded by a reputable third-party grader, that the coin is authentic. And there are some series that are quite expensive. And if you are on a limited budget and you really want a coin from this series, but you can't afford a very nice straight graded coin, then you can keep your eyes out for a details graded coin, and often you can get those at a very large discount. We've talked many times before on this channel about chop marked coins, and I'll show an example here. Those marks that you see on the surface of the coin are actually made or were made by Chinese merchants in the 1600s, 1700s, even 1800s, and all the way into the very beginning of the 1900s. They would have a metal punch that often had a device on the bottom of it. Sometimes it was a design, sometimes it was initial, a Chinese character, and they would literally hammer that into the surface of the coin to see if the coin had a depth of solid silver as far as they could hammer it into. They also got to be experts, I imagine, in just knowing when something felt right and felt wrong. And sometimes you can find coins with tons of these chop marks on them. Sometimes these coins can be really exceptional. I happen to like chop marks a lot. I've talked about them on this channel. I think that they kind of add a little bit of authenticity and interest to certain coins, like the Mexican 8 reales or the Spanish colonial 8 reales. These were pieces that were heavily traded back and forth between New Spain or the Americas and China, and all the way back again. Sometimes they made that trip back forth 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and we're talking about tens of thousands of miles of sea travel and overland travel, and I think that just adds some really interesting character to these pieces. Chop marks, that can be significant enough that a third-party grader will still grade a coin based on its details, but it will also indicate that the coin is chop marked. Just an example of a coin that can have a details grade, but that can still be desired by a collector. Another example is kind of a little bit on the other side of that spectrum. There was the earliest military submarine. Anybody raise their hands? You know what it was? The CSS Hunley. The CSS Hunley was captained by Captain George Dixon, who was reported to have had in his pocket when he was at Shiloh a $20 gold piece, an 1860 $20 gold piece. Got shot in the leg, the bullet hit the $20 gold piece and just completely cupped it, and I'll show a picture of what it looks like here. Now, for a long time, this was just supposed to be kind of a rumor, a myth, if you will. Nobody actually knew. He went down with the ship, and that went down over 100 years ago, and there was just no way to prove this until they were able to recover the Hunley. And when they recovered it, would you believe they actually found his $20 gold piece? And etched on the back of it, it says, Shiloh, April 6, 1862, my life preserver, GED. So we know that this was Dixon's actual $20 gold piece. He did actually get shot at Shiloh, and this coin was his lifesaver. At least that's how he thought of it. So this coin would details grade if it was ever sent off to NGC or PCGS. They might say that the details on it was fine to very fine, but it was details graded graffiti or etched or inscribed, something like that. So you can see that that coin would have immense value if it came up for auction, and it would be nice to have it authenticated and sealed in a nice plastic holder, one of these slabs that we talk about often, but it would still be technically a details graded coin. So you get the idea of what a details graded coin was. I wanted to arm you with some of that information because I was asked about it. And sometimes I forget that not everybody has been doing this for quite as long as I have. Stop me if there's something you need me to explain. I would be happy to, believe me. The only bad questions are those that are asked after you make a big purchase. If you've got questions about anything that I'm talking about now, if it's leading you up to making a purchase, that's the right time to ask a question. And I'd love to hear those questions. So when I sent these off, you're probably coming to this from video number 1, and it's been 5 minutes since you watched that. It has been 3 long months since I filmed the first video in Coin Safari. And I said at the end of that video that I anticipated it was going to be 30 days or maybe even 60 days before I got these pieces back. Not quite 3 months, but really close to it. Now, NGC says when you send these pieces off to them, that they estimate a certain amount of time it's going to take for them to get through this series of pieces that you sent to them and to grade them and send them back to you. In this case, NGC said it was going to be about 37 days, and I'll get into that a little bit later here. But the thing is that they don't tell you, and the thing that I tend to forget, is that after you ship the pieces off, they sometimes sit in their mailroom or in their vault for weeks before it actually enters their system, and they can start working it through the process of grading these pieces. That is, initially cataloging them, taking a look at them, having the graders take a look at them, having the graders match their grades on them, have the coins sealed, having the coins pass through their customer service, and then go through their cataloging system where they put them into their electronic system, notifying you electronically, and then getting them to their shipping department and finally shipping them out to you. So before any of that really happens, especially if they've got a big backlog, those coins can sit in their vaults for a month before they even start working on them. And that 37 days that they said they estimated it was going to take for their economy level, several different levels of slabbing, didn't indicate that there was that big of a backlog. So before those 37 days even started counting down, these coins just sat there and sat there and sat there. So believe me, it has been forever since I sent that first group off. I'm glad that you weren't with me while we were playing the waiting game and you can just jump right to the conclusion, because honestly, that's the best part. I mentioned that there were different tiers when you're submitting coins to a third-party grader. I talked a little bit about it in the first video. In this case, I sent these pieces in under 3 different tiers. The gold coins went under World Gold, which is about a 4-week wait, a little bit faster than some of them. The 2 best Chinese pieces, and I'll talk about those again, went under World Standard, and that's supposed to take about 6 weeks. But the rest of them went under World Economy, and that's really what the backlog was. It just took forever for those final group of about 6 pieces to work their way through NGC's system. And like I said, by the time the dust settled, it was really, really close to 3 months before between when I shipped them off and when I received them at my post office box. That was a happy day. Now, fortunately, NGC does tell you as soon as they get done logging these into their system for their final customer service before they ship them off to you, they let you know what the grades were. But even just discounting that, the week and a half that it took them to arrive at my post office box, it still took 2.5 months. It took forever. Glad that you didn't have to wait like I did. So let's get right into it, right? The reason that you're here, the reason that I did this huge buildup is because I wanted to go over these pieces with you, and we're going to have some fun with this. I think you're really going to enjoy it. We're going to take it from the top. So we're going to go in the same order that I did for the coins in the first video. So we'll kind of be able to track those. And what I want to do is I want to say what I thought the coin was going to grade, and I'll show you what NGC said that the final grade was. How does that sound? Let's get right to it. The first one, this is the 1914 Yuan Shikai silver dollar. Remember I said that Yuan Shikai was a military leader and technically the last emperor of China, crowned himself emperor right before he passed away. His reign about 1912, I believe, to about 1915, 1916. He standardized the larger silver coins for the Republic of China, and this is kind of a classic silver crown from China from this period of time. Now, if you remember correctly, I said that this piece had, while it was very attractive, and you can see just a little bit of luster there, you see that kind of cartwheel trying to break through there. This piece has really bad rim damage, and you can just see it around the outside here. And I knew that that was going to be picked up by NGC. I knew that they were going to have issues with it. So I predicted that this one was going to come back VF details. Remember, VF is somewhere in that 20, I think, when we're talking about VF. I thought it was going to details grade because of the rim damage. I did think that it was an attractive coin, and even though it's darkly toned, and we talk about tone a little bit on this channel, and we'll talk about it definitely a lot more in 2024 and forward, the condition of the coin, the darkness doesn't bother me. It just shows that this coin hasn't ever been cleaned before. At least it's been a long time since it has been cleaned. So what do you think? Was I right with VF details? Let's check and see what the taxidermist said. Are you ready for it? They actually said AU details. So I was a little bit off on that one to the positive. So this actually worked in my favor. They did agree that this was a detailed coin, details coin, and you can see it says rim damage right there. But they actually felt that the remaining details of this coin were strong enough to warrant an AU grade, about uncirculated. So it doesn't have that numeric scale number. It doesn't have the corresponding 50 or 53 or 55 that a straight graded coin would have. But it's still graded AU details. That's not terrible for these coins. There is such strong collector demand for these, especially in China, that if I were to sell this piece, I would have no trouble selling it. Now, I wouldn't be able to get as much for it as a straight graded AU coin, but I don't imagine that the discount will be that significant, especially because this piece rests in an NGC slab. So this piece has been authenticated. And that is incredibly important to the people that buy these pieces because there are so many counterfeits out there. So I'd call that a win. I'd call that a nice win. That was, I predicted a VF details and it came back AU details. The second one was this other Yuan Shikai dollar. And if you remember this one from the first video, I said it just wasn't as nice a degree of preservation. It obviously is not afflicted by those rim issues that the last one was, but it also has seen more circulation wear. And this one actually is exhibiting tone that is not entirely unlike the counterfeit pieces that you'll see in this series. Remember, the whole point of this safari is that if you're picking up these pieces raw in the wild that haven't been certified, you have to expect that there are so many counterfeit of these pieces out there that you really have to kind of know what you're looking for. And even though it's got that counterfeity looking toning on it, I was still pretty confident that this was a real piece. I was able to test it with my Sigma. I was able to test it with the scales and the calibers. And I felt that this was a good quality piece. I knew it was authentic. However, it had seen some wear. So I predicted this would come back a fine 12. And what did the taxidermist say? How about that? XF 40. So they jumped this up considerably from what I thought it was going to be. If I'm somewhere in that 12, maybe 15, they said it was actually a 40. And it's straight graded, and now it's authenticated too by NGC. So this is a definite win, if I do say so myself. That was a nice one. I'm glad to get that one back. Number 3. This is the third and final Yuan Shikai dollar, and you can see that this one just had fantastic luster. If you recall in the first video, I talked about how deeply carved his epaulets there on his shoulder, and his hair also. But I also mentioned that scratch across his chin, his jaw, and I felt that might give this coin a details grade. I thought NGC might decide that scratch was significant enough that they didn't feel comfortable giving this coin a numeric grade. Now, that would be a real shame because this piece is really beautiful. It's got enough luster left over. It doesn't have any rim damage. That's really the only thing that you can say was wrong with this, but I didn't know, right? I wasn't sure what NGC was going to say about it. And I mentioned that there are certain series where they're a little bit more forgiving of those kinds of things, and this is definitely one of them. You saw that first example with the bad rim damage on it. So many of these pieces are in such bad condition that they seem to be a little bit more forgiving on it. So I was hoping that this one would straight grade, that it wouldn't get a details grade, and that it would grade at least AU 50 or AU 55. So what do we think? Straight graded MS 61. Thrilled, really thrilled. That was one of the best scores from this group. The fact that NGC saw this as a genuine uncirculated piece is authentic. There is no damage that warrants a details grade. Like I said, sometimes those little things like tiny surface scratches aren't significant enough to keep them from giving this a straight grade. In this case, they went ahead and 61'd it. They gave it a 61. That is across that MS threshold, that mint stayed threshold that starts at 60. So they felt that this was a 61. Now, if you saw the World of Coin Collecting Volume 4, where I talk about coin grades and coin grading, I talked about some of those early MS grades that are kind of problematic. You don't often see a grade of 60. You don't often see a grade of 61, and you don't really see 62s that often either. When you do, that's usually a clue that something is slightly amiss with the coin. It's still technically uncirculated, but it has some kind of characteristics that kind of keep it back, that hold it back. And I suspect that that's what they were thinking. That surface scratch, just enough to keep them from giving it a 63, because honestly, the luster and the strike of that coin are phenomenal. So they gave it a 61, and I'm actually okay with that. Like I said, my guess on that one, I was hoping for a straight grade. I was hoping for an AU 55, straight graded 61. Ka-ching, that is definitely a positive. Glad to have gotten that one back too. And we're going to keep on moving right along. This is the first of these junk dollars. Now, if you didn't catch it the first time, they're called junk dollars because they have this boat on the back. This boat is a Chinese junk. That's why it's called a junk dollar. It has nothing to do with the fact that this coin is in such bad condition. This is the first of the junk dollars that I showed in the last video. And if you recall, I said that this was in 1933. That is a much more scarce date than the 34s that followed immediately afterwards. That's Sun Yat-sen on the front. He is the leader of the Chinese Republic that was ousted and eventually taken by Mao Zedong, the communists. And you recall that I said that the United States of America actually minted these for China in all of the branch mints in Denver, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. So this piece I thought had really good detail left, but the rim damage on it was significant enough that I thought that this would probably become a details graded coin. And what I didn't really mention in the last video, and which I kind of wish that I had, the reason why I talked about it at the beginning of the video, is that you can see right here, that is a chop mark, and that is a chop mark. So it was my hope that NGC would see those chop marks and grade this a details graded coin and indicated it had chop marks, almost kind of glossing over the fact that it's got significant rim damage. That was not the case. So I thought this would be a VF30. What did the taxidermist say? Well, XF. So I thought it would be a VF details. It's actually an XF details. And they also noted that it is chop marked, but then they also indicated rim damage. So even though this is a details graded coin, and they took the opportunity to say exactly why it was details graded coin. Now on NGC's website, when they talk about details coins, they actually say that it's not very often that they will indicate more than one reason why a coin was details graded. In this case, I liked having the chop mark designation, not so thrilled about the rim damage designation, but frankly, anybody who saw this piece could tell that it's got rim damage. It is definitely a details graded coin, but it is a much more scarce date, a much more valuable piece. So to have it come back at a higher grade of details, I'd call that a win. That's still a pretty nice thing. And as with all of these pieces, it is now certified and authenticated by NGC. Definitely a win as far as I'm concerned for the first of the junk dollars. That takes us to kind of the equivalent of the Yuan Shikai dollar. You remember that that second Yuan Shikai dollar was a little bit lesser graded, but there weren't really any problems with it. So that's this one, and this is the 1934. It's a lot less scarce than that previous junk dollar that we saw. And for this one, I figured it was kind of average circulated, but that maybe it had really light cleaning back in the day. And I almost wish I hadn't said that, but I think it's a good learning tool for us here. I talk about cartwheel luster, and even though we've got some glare here, you can kind of see that cartwheel. Do you see that? That to me is an indication that if this coin was cleaned, it was very lightly cleaned, and you can see that it's picking up some tone here. There's nothing that seems out of character for this piece that much to me. We would call this market acceptable, at least I believe it would be. Don't clean your coins. please don't clean your coins. Sometimes if a coin has been cleaned in the past and they didn't do a terrible job, if they didn't harshly clean the coin, the third-party graders will let it slide. They'll call it market acceptable. That doesn't mean that it's a good thing that it got cleaned, just that it didn't do so much damage that they can't give it a details grade. So that cartwheel, and there's actually little bits of toning, you can see it here and there, that are actually kind of almost rainbow toning. I was really hoping that this piece would get an AU50 straight grade, but I did indicate when we made the first video that it looked like it had evidence of having been very lightly cleaned at some point in the past. So what did the taxidermist say on this piece? They said it was uncirculated, but they said it was uncirculated details. I would much rather have had an AU50 and AU55 straight grade rather than an uncirculated details piece. Now, some people may disagree with that. And again, in the Chinese market, these are incredibly hot. They're very popular. And anybody who saw this piece would appreciate the fact that it was in the NGC holder, would appreciate the fact that it was authentic, and would appreciate the fact that it doesn't look like it's really been cleaned. I still think that this is market acceptable. And frankly, I researched this piece before I started shooting today, and there are other examples out there that look much more harshly cleaned than this piece that are in straight graded holders. I know that sounds a little sour grapes of me, but frankly, I think they could have given this piece a pass. It's a higher details grade, but a lower straight grade than I would have wanted. So I would kind of say that this one goes in the loss pile. Let me know your thoughts about it. Do you think that it's you would rather have an uncirculated details grade or a straight graded lower coin? I'm a little bit up in the air on that. I kind of disagree with NGC on that one. Unfortunately, it's not valuable enough to crack this out and send it back to NGC hoping to get a different grade. Frankly, they may come back and say that it's still a details grade even if they looked at it a second time. Uncirculated details, a little bit of a disappointment with that one. It's not a crushing blow. It's not a super valuable coin, but I would have liked to have had it straight graded. The next one is the Moose. That's what I called it in that first video. And this is a 1934 junk dollar also, but this one I thought was spectacular. You can see just how much this piece glows in the light. You don't find these in that kind of condition very often. So when I saw this, I was thrilled to pick it up. It does have some toning on it. That's not the most attractive. We would possibly call that mottled toning. Sometimes you want to see pieces that are toned, that have a nice rainbow to them, or colors. In this case, that color is mostly just kind of dark and splotchy. To me, it says that that coin hasn't been cleaned, and the luster on this piece definitely shows that this piece hadn't been cleaned. So I was thrilled with a cartwheel and luster on this piece. I predicted that it was getting an MS62 grade just because, you know, these are pieces that definitely saw heavy circulation. So even though those pieces that were set aside, you expect them to be kind of downgraded just a little bit. So what did the taxidermist say on this one? Straight graded 63. That's a pretty phenomenal grade for these. There are something like 1,500 that have been graded higher than this, but I will definitely take it. That is a definite win. Again, 62, a little bit of a problematic grade. I said that 60, 61, and 62 sometimes seen as problematic grades. I thought that NGC was going to be a little bit more harsh with me on that one, but they straight graded that as 63. And I got to tell you, I can't be upset with that. That is probably one of the best grades of this entire group. Moving right along, two more Chinese coins, and they are this piece, which is the 1927 memento dollar. So I said in the first video that these were actually made in 1927 and restruck. Again, China suffered from bouts of having not nearly enough coinage at times, so they would restrike popular coins. This one kind of celebrating the birth of the Chinese nation. And because of that, these pieces were probably set aside more. You know, these were a little bit more of a collector piece, something that the grandparents would have in a cabinet somewhere, not the kind of thing that necessarily got spent immediately. And because of that, I thought that this piece would probably, hopefully, straight grade. I predicted that it had a little bit of light cleaning also, like that last junk dollar that had the light cleaning. But again, I figured it was probably market acceptable. It didn't look terrible. It didn't look like the color of the coin was all one color and that it was really harshly scrubbed or anything. but I thought maybe a VF20 straight grade. That was what I was hoping for. Market acceptable, a little bit of conditions to it, but nothing that would keep it really from straight grading like that. I'm trying to see what direction we're headed here. There we go. I had it right the first time. So, drum roll, VF20, my guess. The taxidermist said AU50. What? Really? That's way better than I thought it was going to be. VF20 to AU50. I'll take it. That's a huge win. That was 30 points higher than I thought it was going to be. They didn't see that there was any problems with the surface of the coin. It didn't warrant a details grade, and they thought it was a lot better state of preservation than I did. Now, in my defense, I haven't really seen very many of these. I was just kind of going off of my experience and looking what to look for a coin that has been circulated. And to me, it was really a little bit lower in quality, but it may have something to do with the strike of the coin too. Sometimes the dies just aren't very sharp, and sometimes they just don't really punch into that silver very deeply, and that can sometimes be mistaken for wear. In this case, I thought it was a VF20. They gave it an AU50. Thrilled with that. That is a huge win. Very happy. Again, not a super expensive coin, not a super valuable coin, but one that will definitely make the money back that I put into it. Glad to get that one in AU50. This is one of the most interesting one from the Chinese silver pieces. You remember this guy? 1920 to 1931 Yunnan province $half. So it's a smaller coin than the others. And if you are a astute coin collector, you know that this already being in a slab means that it's not the counterfeit coin that I thought it was. When NGC or PCGS has a coin that they have decided is a fake coin, they put it in what we call a body bag. They don't even bother putting it into one of these rigid holders. They simply put it into a plastic flip that has a little label on it that says artificial, fake, counterfeit, not authentic, and they send it back to you. It's kind of a slap in the face sometimes. But this piece, I thought that the light copper color that was showing through might indicate that this was a fake. And remember in the first video I said Sigma wasn't quite sure what to make of it. The scale wasn't showing me exactly what it should be. And that coppery colored was a little bit weird. So I fully expected this one to come back counterfeit. And I said the reason I was sending this off was to kind of educate me a little bit more what to look for. What did NGC have to say? AU details, harshly cleaned. Hey kids, don't clean your coins. This is an example of a harshly cleaned coin. At least that's what they thought about it. And that's what kind of fooled me. You can see that in this case, I thought this piece was counterfeit. And one of the reasons that I thought it was counterfeit is that the surfaces just didn't look right. NGC affirmed that it is an authentic coin. It is not a counterfeit. It's just been harshly cleaned. So this is a win. It's a big win, right? I kind of thought that this one was going to be a fake, and it turned out to be an authentic piece, just very harshly cleaned. Were I to sell it, I might make as much money as I paid for it in the first place. So I'm going to call that one a win. I thought it was fake, and it's not fake. That's got to be a win, right? That brings us to the end of the silver coins. We've got a collection of gold coins to look over, so hopefully you will join me for part 3 of the coin safari. We're going to look at these pieces, and we're going to go over the 4 interesting gold coins that I also bought raw in the wild on that safari. And there's a big surprise or 2 or 3 in that group. So I hope you join me for part 3. If you have any questions about any of these pieces that we've been over today, I think my win stack is really nice. I think we did some great work. It's really gratifying to know that I can pick out the pieces in the wild that are authentic. Whether or not I can tell if they've been cleaned heavily, that's a little bit more of a tricky thing to do, and that's definitely something that you can ask the expert's opinion on. That's why I ship these pieces off to NGC. But of all the pieces that I lost on, the fact that this piece came back as an uncirculated details coin versus an AU straight graded coin, you could even argue whether or not those are equivalent. I think in the right circumstances, this piece will probably sell for as much as an AU50 coin would have anyway. So overall, I'm very pleased with the silver coins. I think I did quite well with them. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about these. Let me know if you agreed with these grades. Let me know if you are impressed with my amazing ability to grade coins. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I used all of my experience and knowledge to pick these pieces, knowing full well that some of them may come back counterfeit, and that's a spoiler alert. And I'm really pleased to have gotten the grades that I got. I think they really came back to the positive, and I couldn't be happier with them, really. If you have questions about them, leave a message. If you have questions about any of the pieces that we talk about on this series, by all means, leave a message. Please remember, if you're looking at these pieces in the wild, they are almost always going to be fake. There are so many counterfeits of these pieces out there that you really, really need to be careful. Very careful. Due diligence. This is a very dangerous game that we're hunting here, and I'm very pleased that we made it back alive on this trip. If you have any suggestions of other videos you'd like to see me make, by all means leave a comment down below, and I will be happy to see if I've got the examples and the knowledge that we can answer that question, whatever it may be. Join me for part 3 of Coin Safari when we talk about the gold coins. There are some exciting pieces here, and as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.